Two. Hang on there, Rick. Let's get started real quick. All right, Nancy, are you online? You got audio and everything? Cool.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, for being a little bit late and behind schedule, but I think we can get started now, correct?
Yes, we are good to go.
Noah looks happy, so I guess we can get started.
Yeah. My apologies if you do lose me again. They've cut the line again, so I'm on cellular and sometimes they throttle it. So I may go without you're seeing me, but I'll still be talking and listening in.
Perfect.
Awesome. And you can text me if you do drop. You have my number still, right?
Yes, yes.
If something comes up and I'll put it out there. All right, thanks, Nancy. So Janelle, I know that you were obviously at the most recent meeting for mayor and city council, and we're basically just ready to get this draft to them. They want to get this done as quickly as possible.
Yes.
Moratorium in place. We're running with what is on the books as it is on the books, correct?
Correct. So anything that comes in needs to comply with the current rules and regulations. So they've asked us to do our due diligence, but quickly do our due diligence. And I think a good help with that is actually the sea level rise subcommittee that did a lot of due diligence on this section, because they're also looking at doing best management practices for the sea level rise issues. So if you want, I can there were a bunch of questions that came up at the last meeting, and I know we've got 7 people online, so welcome. One of the big questions was at the last meeting, do we need to redo the work that had already been done from 2004? Do we need to hire somebody? I reached out to a hydrogeologist who has experience with this and said the geology has not changed since 2004. And geology really doesn't change. So there's not really a need to redo that work. And I know there was a question about, well, the water table keeps rising. Does that impact excellent recharge? And I was informed the water table really does not impact geology. So again, I think we're good there. Because it might impact like where the water is, but it doesn't impact what's underneath the water, which is the geology of that. Because I see you've got a quizzical look, Joe.
Well, I'm thinking, is it the freshwater table or the saltwater? Which one is rising, or both?
I think it's really the freshwater. I mean, we all are getting intrusion from some saltwater. But again, implementing some best management practices will help stay that for a little bit longer. So I know those were the 2 kind of big questions. There's another one that I just have forgotten to answer. I apologize. I left some of my notes at my desk, and I'm not at my desk at the moment. Because I know those were the big questions were about the geology. Do we need to relook at the geology? And I was told we don't. That really doesn't change. So I don't see a need to hire somebody else to do a report based on the fact that the geology really doesn't change. And some of the other items really are not impacted by the excellent recharge. And I would also note the code, if somebody believes, and this is separate from doing an environmental assessment impact report, there is a section of code that allows, if you want to challenge the excellent recharge and you want to say, hey, it really isn't here, there's a process that an applicant can go through. My understanding from talking to the professional is not too many have been very successful with that because of the way the data was done. And I mean, they really did my understanding is they did a good job. Very few have been successful in challenging the data, saying you're not in an excellent recharge area. So I think, again, there is that process that somebody has the ability to go through if they want to say, hey, we don't believe we're actually in an excellent recharge area. And that is a different process than saying, I want to go from 20% to 50%, which requires a little bit of different type of documentation and study.
Yep. Also, Rick had brought something up that might be along that topic. Is the planning commission aware of any permits that were submitted that would provide scientific information to support the ordinance, i.e. testing required by every applicant under Lewis provision? I don't think we've talked about anything like that in this ordinance at all.
We have not, and that's
and
not
I-
something we're
yeah.
looking at. We're looking at holistically an ordinance to address some concerns we have.
Mhm. So where we're at now with all this is we have the draft ordinance that you provided us, correct? So we're
Yes.
at where we just need to go through and tighten that up and see what we feel about that, correct?
Yes.
All right, so can we get started with that? Could you bring up can you screen share the draft or?
Absolutely. And I'm gonna take and do like a hybrid version and some points I want us to discuss between what was originally done and what Sea Level Rise Subcommittee has done on this. So let me bring that up. Let me share my screen. And this one. Okay. So really what you're going to notice is the big changes are here are just kind of like how we called out the best management practices. For bioretention, there's a couple of examples. For permeate pavement, there's examples. For rain harvesting, there's a couple of examples. So that's what we did. We just kind of gave it a main topic and then kind of broke it down to examples. And what we also did for that subcommittee is recognize there are other scientifically proven best management practices to address flooding. So we added that one in there. What I think the two main differences are, currently, again, the code says 20% is your maximum. You can go up to 50% if you do this report, which is the part, this is what we're looking to change. The way it's currently worded, it says your maximum lot coverage is identified in the underlying zoning. So currently our zonings go up to 60 and 65%. But what this says is if you do it, you're going to your 65%, you have to do at least 3 stormwater best management practices from 2 different categories. Everybody with me so far?
So this would allow someone, so right now, 20% is what's allowed in this area.
Correct.
But if you do BMPs, you can bump up to 65% lot coverage.
So it would get rid of the 20% and say you could just do the 65%, but you have to do 3 best management practices.
Gotcha.
What Sea Level Rise Subcommittee has done has said you're maxed at 50% lot coverage, but you can go up an extra 10% if you do 3 best management practices. So instead of your base being 20, your base got bumped up to 50. And again, if you don't like 50, we can change that number. But it also says, okay, if you do, you can do 50 without any best management practices. But if you want that 60%, you've got to do best management practices. So that's the big difference between the 2 ordinances right now, is one says you can automatically do whatever the code says for your lot coverage, as long as you do best management practices. The other says your minimum lot, your maximum is 50%, but you can go over that by 10% as long as you do 3 best management practices that are offset that 10%. And again, right now we're talking about currently what's on the regs is 20%. So if you think 50% is too high or too low, that is the number that is definitely up for discussion. Or if you just want to leave as originally written, go with the 60%, you can do that. But right now, coming out of Sea Level Rise is they're like, your base is coming down for lot coverage, but we we're giving you that carrot as long as you provide some best management practices.
Janelle?
Yes.
Is there any, I'm just looking at this quickly, is there any thing in here to guarantee the person will keep these, maintain these?
So number 2 is an annual report. Annual reporting shall be submitted to the Planning and Development Department to ensure
Sure.
that the BMPs are installed and being maintained and functional. Because yeah, we understand it's like, okay, well, I put it in, I built my house, and now I sell it 5 years down the road. Like, what do I have to do? It's like, well, you have to provide documentation to us that it's still there.
Good, okay.
This is-
Janelle, what is the enforcement on that? I mean, first of all, I guess in 2 situations. One is if you're selling it in 5 years, and then the other is supposedly you're just continuing to live in it for 20 years and nothing is being maintained.
So because this is part of the zoning code, it would be a violation of the zoning ordinance. And we have processes, like if anybody's in violation of the zoning code, there's a process to go through to get them to come into compliance. And that's an enforcement action done by the code enforcement office, which is the building office.
With the yearly reporting, is there a cost to the city of like, are checks done on these reports, or I guess I'm basically saying, how do we know someone is truthfully reporting?
I think like we normally do is we take them at their word. It's like, okay, you have a business license, you're telling us you're still in business, you're getting a contractor's license, you're getting a building permit, we're going to expect that you're following what that permit says, and I think we can always go out and do spot checks, especially when there's so much construction going on that, if the inspectors notice it's like something just doesn't look right, they have that ability to stop and look into it.
Okay, thank you.
So the annual reporting, the homeowner every year will have to submit a document to the city saying my BMPs are still in place.
Yes.
Is that common in the city to do that on annual reporting for different things?
Yeah, I mean, so we have annual reporting for business licenses. So if you have a business license, annual, as to when it gets put into place, that, paying your taxes, you pay your taxes annually. So it's just a little bit different, but it was a good way for us to kind of figure out and make sure that it's like, I put in a rain barrel and then 5 days later I disconnected it. Just to like, oh, look, I did it. I got my extra, but then I disconnected it. Or I put in a rain garden and then, I totally like got rid of it, So I think it was just a way to do that. Now, if there's other things you guys can think of, we can do that.
I just don't like having private homeowners, have to do extra annual reporting like taxes. I get that. That's kind of an annual report. I see that, but I don't like getting into saying, all right, we'll let you do this, but every year you got to come tell us, like, come on, like it's their land. We're allowing uses. I'm just not a fan of annual reporting on things like this. I understand the importance of keeping these things in place. But I just don't see that as something I'm a big fan of from a private homeowner.
Yeah, if we get a majority saying we don't like it, we can take it out.
I almost feel like if you agree to, if we decide whatever that base number is, we say, all right, if you do a BMP, you get the extras back. If you decide to remove that BMP, and we find out it's reported, then I think something can be done about it then, but I don't think we should be having homeowners report every year.
Janelle, how is the reporting conceptualized? Is this something, I know at one point when we lived in New York City, we would get a letter from the city every year and we had to report whether we had child safety bars on the windows to prevent a child from falling out a window, basically. And it was very easy because you kind of just tick this off and mailed it back. Or is this something where we're expecting the homeowner to actually prepare a written letter and send it in?
I think we go a bunch of different ways. I think a lot of this is I'm going to need to coordinate with code enforcement. I know that right now it says it needs to come to me, but I also need to coordinate with code enforcement, and we can figure out what would be the best way. Like if I don't get a response back, at what point do I need to send code enforcement? What do they need to be looking at? And if we can track, the building permits that are impacted, again, this really impacts the majority of it. Now, again, some of it is across Gills Neck Road, but the majority of it is between the canal and the bay, from Cape Henlopen up to, I think, Kentucky. Those are the properties that are impacted. We can always like send out a form letter, keep track of those. Or if you don't like it, we just don't have to go with it.
Janelle, you could possibly, on the city's annual tax bill, include a questionnaire on that, or just a check off on the back of it or something, to ask about whether you are in this category and are you still maintaining your BMPs.
We can, I think there's a number of ways if you want
Mhm.
that reference, because I know there were a lot of concerns about, well, again, if they implement it, how do we ensure that they maintain it? And the important thing is we need them to be maintained, because this is all about quality and quantity of water and getting that back into the ground.
Yeah, but how many are we actually talking about? Because we have it's not a huge area that's affected by this excellent recharge, correct? It's just that area between the bay, or I'm sorry, between the canal and the bay. And, right now you have what, 4 applications pending? I mean, by the end of this, we're not talking about hundreds of people, are we?
No, because I think there's a lot of buildings already built, but we're talking
Exactly.
about redevelopment,
Mhm.
expansions, new construction, tear downs, and rebuilds. I know of a couple others that are like looking to be coming in. So it's just, I think this could be helpful, but
Have any of
just
the
the overall
applicants
code.
Yeah. Have any of the applicants voiced any, obviously none of them have come to any of our public meetings. We haven't had a whole lot from, I don't think, any specific applicants, but is there anything that you're able to share with us about your end of things and dealing with these people who are coming to you in the city for applications? Like, what are we hearing from them?
So I know there are a couple people, there were several that were in the queue. They've been allowed to continue with their process, but if they had not already been submitted, I know I've talked to a couple of people, and they have concerns about having to comply currently with the 20% lot coverage. And again, I know that's why we're trying to move quickly through this. And I think this is a good hybrid, especially for us, because our excellent recharge area, and I'm going to break my word about not tying this to wellheads, our excellent recharge area is not directly tied to our wellhead, but we still need to protect the quality and the quantity of the water that it's going into, and that aquifer that we are now recharging. So it's still very important that we address and maintain some type of provisions and be in compliance with the state regulations. Okay. I know Rick's got his hand up, but he's been chatting away. So he's got a lot of questions. So I'm going to try and answer as many as I can. Mr. Quill, a lot of these members are from the commission are new, so they were not here around 2008 when the original ordinance went through. And I'm not sure if it went through the planning commission or not. It should have, but again, that could have been done differently. You want to know if any scientist confirmed that one drop of water can possibly impact the water resources considering the dynamics. Again, what we've heard is quality and quantity is what we want to protect in the excellent recharge area, and that's also very important. There will be a public hearing because this is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, so there's always a public hearing. It has not been set yet. First thing we need to do is get some type of consensus from the subcommittee, and they will pass it along to the planning commission. Planning commission will hold a public meeting, make the recommendation to council. Council will hold a hearing and make a final decision. Your question is, how does the percentage changes affect GC lot coverage? Again, right now it would be whatever the percentage is, which right now most places can go up to 60 or 65. And then, you know, what sea level rise said is bring it down to 50, but you can go back up to 60. Maybe not get to that back to the 65, but you can get back up to the 60 with some best management practices. This is not retroactive. Ordinances are not retroactive. They go from when they are adopted forward. So we do not go backwards. So again, I'm not getting into the enforcement over the last 12 years. I don't have that one. Your question about code enforcement. Yes, we do actually have active code enforcement in the city. They're out looking for people working without permits, you know, working on without business licenses. They're finding violations and sending multiple letters every week. So, you know, we do have an active code enforcement section of the city. And yes, this provision could impact a lot of properties. And again, what this is going to impact is new construction and redevelopment and any kind of additions is what this is going to impact for this section of code. And again, right now it's actually providing more relief than what currently is allowed in the code, because current code says 20%. So I think it's, do we want to say, yep, you can have your 65%, or do we want to say, maybe that's a little too much for our excellent recharge area and bring it down, but give you that carrot going, okay, you can get an extra 10% if you do your best management practices. And I think that's something we want to discuss. So hopefully I've answered your questions.
Yeah.
Oh, we just got a Mr. Jacobs.
Oh, good. Yeah, good to hear from you, Mr. Jacobs. Definitely, we are trying to work quickly to rectify this situation. Are we letting, is this public?
So
Wow.
if you want to allow Mr. Quill to speak, you have that ability.
Let's
He's
talk
asked,
about,
but I think, you know, let's talk about the code sections and see what we have going, because that's really the point of this. This is not particular about a specific property. We're looking holistically at the overall excellent recharge area for the city. And again, this also does go to the west of the bay, of the canal, over a couple of properties along. I can't think.
What I would like to do, though, because I would like to hear from them, but I want to kind of get a sense from our group and Brent in particular about this, because it seems like one of the first factors we need to look at is bringing that 20% lot coverage up to either 50 or 65. So I think that 50% number, whatever we're bringing from the 20 up, is kind of what's most important. And I'm not really sure how our group feels right now about those numbers and lot coverage. So I think we should discuss a little bit about this ordinance, because that's what I want to focus this time on right now, is hashing out details from this ordinance so that we can move it on to the next steps. Does that make sense? All right, so I've been thinking about that. I definitely think 20% is not fair for homeowners in that area, and I would like to see that raised. Brent, do you see any problems with going from 50 to 65, or is that 10% and having those BMPs necessary, or is just keeping, 25% of your lot open to reinfiltration, is that satisfactory? Like, I kind of want to hear from our engineer on that.
So we went through the exercise before, looking at the duplexes and having the question about lot size on duplexes. And I believe when Janelle went through and ran the numbers, there were what, like 20 some that she ran, and she found that the average on a duplex lot was around 50%. So, and that was even without these provisions to go bigger, so to speak.
And also to add to that, Brent, if I can, those were some small lots.
Yeah.
Some of
yeah.
those were really small lots.
So the 50% number is easily achievable. And one of the biggest ones to do to get there is pervious paving or pervious driveways. Now, that's up to the homeowner's choice. If they want to pave, then that's going to potentially kick it up to that 55 or 60% lot coverage, which means that they would have to do the additional BMPs in order to get that. So that's kind of the offset for doing a true paved driveway or a concrete driveway.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of Brett?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to phrase this exactly, but when I'm looking at the BMPs, if I have a very small lot, a rain barrel and what it's going to collect and the impact it has, maybe would offset, I don't know, I'm making this number up right now, might offset an increase of 5% in coverage. If I have a very large lot, that 5% is affecting a lot more land. Do these BMPs, I'm just trying to get a handle on the degree to which they make sense in terms of the impact on the recharge area.
So I think instead of providing a percentage, because not all lots are created equal, I think we need to provide a square footage.
Mm-hmm.
So that if your rain barrel treats 100 square feet, then you get 100 square feet, type thing, or whatever ratio it is. You know, all rain gardens aren't created equal, but if your rain garden is treating 200 square feet, then you would get 200 square feet for putting that rain garden in. And I think that's probably the best way to go about it, is to get a 1-to-1 ratio in there, that anything over the threshold that you choose, then you're treating it with a BMP.
Mm-hmm. And do we have examples of other jurisdictions that have done that kind of equivalency or?
I don't know if we have a direct example,
Mm-hmm.
but this kind of piggybacks on kind of what Ocean City started doing probably 20 years ago with their critical areas.
Right.
That they started requiring plantings and certain number, you know, there was a formula that they had for plants and shrubs and bushes and everything to meet the lot coverage, kind of, you know, basically to get the nutrients out of the rainwater.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know in, I want to say Norfolk and Boston, they have some of these best management practices, but it's a point system that then gets you to like so many best management practices equals so many points that equals something else. So it's a more complicated way of calculating it. So we were just trying to do something kind of simple, easy for everybody to understand, try to be clear.
Can you screen share the BMPs for us? So, because is this where it's like, I need to see it in front of me, 2 from this category, 1 from this category? Are they categorized, these BMPs, and weighted on this draft?
So they are categorized. So like we have bioretention, and examples of that are rain gardens, tree box filters, streetscape bioretention, raised planter boxes. And in the design guidelines, we also recognize not all of these are best for a single family lot. Some of these actually might be more geared towards commercial or larger scale residential development. So the design standards actually look at that as well. So, and then we move into the next category, which is permeable pavement, pavers, grid pavement systems, pervious concrete, porous asphalt, give you a couple of different options. Conservation landscaping is just a category, bioswale is a category, infiltration is a trench or a basin is typically what we see, filtration, sand filter, underground sand filter, different things. And again, in the design guidelines that I believe I sent them out and pointed everybody to from the last meeting. We recognize not all of these make sense for a single family house, because some of them, it's just too much for a single family house, but maybe for a commercial development or some other type of development, or maybe a multifamily development, or a new subdivision coming in, they would be more appropriate too. And we also recognize that there might be items out there that we don't know of yet, so we want to recognize that, so then we don't have to continue to update the code. Did that answer your question?
It did. Thank you.
Okay,
I have a question for Janelle.
go.
Your third bullet point down, rooftop disconnect, should that really be downspout disconnect? Because that's where your rain barrels are located, and I don't think a rooftop disconnect is the right term. I think a downspout disconnect would be better.
So actually, in the stormwater code that's published by DENREC, it's called a rooftop disconnect.
Rooftop disconnect, which really is a downspout.
Yeah, so whichever manner you use to get it from there to the ground, 99.9% of the time it's a downspout.
Downspout.
But
So it's understood it's a downspout. Okay, all right. Thank you.
because sometimes on commercial buildings, I've seen it before where they run it to the center and have a stack in the middle of the building, and they call it something different than a downspout at that point.
Uh-huh. Okay, all right. Carry on.
How do we feel as a group about bumping from 20 to 50% lot coverage? How do we feel about the 50 number? That's affirmative from Joe.
Good for me.
You're happy with 50?
Very happy.
I'm happy with 50, and I like the idea of getting the homeowner having the ability to go up to 65. I'm a little bit curious about this one-to-one tactic. I like the percentages. Like if you're able to just pick the BMPs, I like how that does make that a lot easier for a homeowner. And I do not like the annual reporting. How you guys feel about? Sounds like we're good with 50. Nancy?
I'm my only concern about 50 is that there's some with these BMPs, there's some equivalency in terms of the actual square footage that's being offset by something. So that was my only discomfort with the percentage. In terms of the reporting, if it's made simple, I don't have a problem with that. And I think if we're giving, if we're making this change to go towards 50, we have to ensure that in the longer term that these things are being maintained. Otherwise, we're going to be in a much worse situation as a community.
All right. So what if the annual reporting were done with at city tax time if it were on from Joe's recommendation? Otherwise, I'm not sure how it would look like to be handled. Like there's just this, on your anniversary, you got to remember to send a letter to this. I've got my rain barrels operating.
So
and
I think that's something internally staff is happy to work on, because I want to make sure because I don't see the tax information. So making sure that it gets to me, because I don't need the tax information. And again, I want to make life easy for me, easy for the code enforcement officer, easy for the public. So yeah, I know I put myself first, which was not appropriate, but I want to make it easy for everybody if we want to go with the reporting process, because yeah, something easy is what we're looking for.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we're in a good position to engineer that ourselves. So I think that's something we need to, in a sense, say, we want it to be simple. We want it to be something that people can kind of check off or in a very easy way, report that they've maintained.
Mhm.
Yeah, and staff will work with, again, I'll work with, if you guys have ideas, I am open to them, but I also have to work internally with other staff and other departments to see what best works. So then how best do we track and maintain this? Because this is also going to require coordination with the building department because they're the one issuing the permits. So how do we best track all of that?
Yeah. Should we, all right, so I feel like we have a good consensus on the 50% and then bumping up to 65%.
So
At max.
it bumps up 10%, which would get you to the 60%, not to the 65.
We don't want to allow 65%.
Right now, as it's drafted from sea level rise, it was, we'll give you 50%, but we're only going to give you an extra 10% if you do best management practices, because you automatically get 50%. You don't have to do anything. If you want that extra 10% to get you to 60, which is only 5% less than you would per today's code standards and what we've been in doing, which is not a whole lot, but it could be to some properties. But then that 10% you have to do the offset with the BMPs. So you guys consider that, and I'm going to try and get to some of the questions.
All right.
Is that sound fair?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys think about that and let me get, so Mr. Jacobs has, the BMPs don't seem very specific in either document. You know, how big does a planter box need to be? And if, yeah. So what this is going to require is additional information from the builder and an engineer when you submit your building permit to go, okay, I wanted, and it's working with the property owner and the builder to go, okay, I'm not going to get my 65%, I'm going to get my 50%, but I want that 60%, which is what I'm kind of hearing from the group. And they go, okay, so how do I get those best management practices, which, as we've identified, are kind of standard practices from engineers. So any engineer should be able to help you out, figure out how to implement that and what it is, and figure out what makes sense for your property. Because we recognize, you know, a green roof may not make sense for every property, may not be financially feasible, may not just actually work right. You know, rain gardens may not be best. So it's a little bit of work between your architect, designer, builder, the owner, and then submitting to the city for an engineering review. Mr. Quill has a concern that the GC lot coverage is currently 95% and it would be going down to 50 with a maximum of 60%. That is correct. You know, the intent, and again, currently it's 20%. So if we're saying, if code, you're not in this area, you can have 95% or 65%. What we're saying is currently you can have 20%. We're actually going to give you up to 50% without any best management practices, but you want 60%, you have to provide some best management practices because we recognize the need for water quality and quantity in this area because that's important. It's helping, you know, provide those items. It's helping, you know, slow the impact of saltwater intrusion. So yes, there are differences, but what currently this does is it treats every property the same, which is what the current code does. Okay, I believe I've answered the best of my ability all the questions in the chat. How are we feeling about between 60 and 65%? Recognizing that we are dealing with not just, and I'm going to tell you, because this also came out of sea level rises, you know, at what point is 65% too much? You know, and what we're doing is eliminating 5%. So you're getting down to 60, which for a lot of places, that is a very large impervious surface coverage. Because most places I have worked, it's 30 to 40% lot coverage. And here, you know, we are now at 65% lot coverage. So just, again, I'm not voting, I'm just providing information.
Joe, what do you think? 60 or 65?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to get overruled by city council, but I think we'll play it safe. We go 60.
I agree.
I think 60, if we're saying that this area is something we want to protect, we got to, you know, do something to protect it. And that extra 5%, I think could go a long way. And like you said, I don't think a lot of people will be covering, hopefully not their entire lot, but we see it happen. We definitely see that happen when it's allowed. I think I'm comfortable with the 50, and then you use the BMPs, put a couple of those in there, you can get up to 60%.
I agree with you. This is Nancy.
Cool.
That'll be a compromise.
Okay.
Let's put some in.
All right. Any other questions about the ordinance?
I do, Janelle.
Okay.
John?
No, go ahead, Joe.
Okay, I was just wondering, can we clarify it as to which particular zoning? Is it all, everything? Is it all R and all GC, or are there certain?
So this is actually an overlay zone, one of the few legal ones we're allowed to have in the state of Delaware.
Okay,
So, and if you go to our online interactive zoning map, you will actually see it. And whatever the underlying zone is, this is on top of that. So it didn't matter, as of today, it doesn't matter what your base zoning is, your lot coverage is at 20%, unless you did a study to get you to 50%. So that's, it doesn't matter if you're R3, R3 historic, open space, marine commercial, general commercial. It didn't matter what the base zoning was, because this took precedent regarding lot coverage, because again, we recognized it as an area that needed additional protection.
okay. Okay, everybody.
John, did you have a question?
Could you put the BMPs back up real quick?
Yep.
Thanks.
There we go.
Thank you. I think it'd be nice if we could somehow make this list more comprehensive. I don't know if comprehensive is the right word, but maybe a little more, I guess, like kind of like that last comment we had in the chat box, like, oh, I'm not sure what this is or what that is. Like if you have your downspouts and you put them directly into the ground into a filter, that would fall under infiltration, correct? Would that be a BMP towards getting that extra percentage?
That would be your rooftop disconnect, as long as it was going into a rain barrel. So that falls under that one.
All right. So you could, an applicant could come up and say, here's what I want to do with some of this runoff, and it's not on this list. And we can say, oh yeah, that's actually going to work. Let's do it.
Yes.
Kind of that's what I'm getting at with the other scientifically proven, I guess.
Yes, because we recognize there's probably new technology, new items that come out. So as long as it's been scientifically proven to address, again, flooding and water quality and quantity, and I might just change that from flooding to water quality and quantity, which I think might be cleaner, we will accept it. And again, they have to just prove that to the city engineer. The city engineer is going to review it, make sure it works, and is offsetting whatever percentage that is.
Okay. right, and I think we had a question about timeline as well. So
Yes.
once we get this out of our committee, it's got to go to the planning commission, correct?
Correct.
And then it's got to wait another 2 weeks and go to MCCO, correct?
So it has to, we're hoping to have something adopted May. And that's going to be a fast timeline because we need to get to commission, planning and zoning commission. Everybody meets tomorrow night at 6 p.m. There is no public comment at that point. It's just a presentation, just an update from this subcommittee to the whole commission about what this subcommittee's been working on. And then the commission will decide next steps. If it's time to hold a public meeting, because then we have to advertise and post that. And then they will make a recommendation to council, and then council will have to schedule a public hearing, hold the public hearing, and then make a decision. So again, normally this takes like 4+ months. We were trying to get this done faster. But again, I can't guarantee any time frame. Again, we are hoping to have it done in 3 months. And that is our best hope. And I think the fact that we have pretty much consensus regarding this draft, I think is good. And I think tomorrow we'll hear what the commission as a whole thinks and how they want to move forward. Because that's my understanding from what I'm hearing. If I'm hearing wrong, you got to tell me that I'm hearing wrong.
That's what I gather as well. So I'm glad that we'll be able to present something to planning commission tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I
Right.
will clean this up with whatever little things, especially just with the clarification at the top, and have that ready for tomorrow.
Okay.
Also, there's a comment in the chat about 95% being reduced to 50% as opposed to 50 to 65 to 50, and it being equitable. Currently, you can have 95% lot coverage as your base zoning, but currently the code says 20. So we are treating everybody equitably, going, okay, everybody's going from 20 to 50, and then you can get up to 60 with some best management practices. And again, we're also have to get, once we get this through commission, this needs to go through DENREC and see what they have to say about this proposed option. So we will see about that.
All right. Is there anything else from the commissions? It looks like, yeah.
Mr. Quill has stated that the code was never enforced, and he wanted me to read that into the comment for the record. I understand there's been, I can't talk to that. I can talk to us how we're moving forward. We're trying to address the concerns that have been expressed to us while still maintaining and protecting the excellent recharge area. Questions, concerns from commission members, subcommittee?
I think we're ready to push this through to planning commission. Full
Okay.
commission. And get it out there for comment.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody, very much.
Okay,
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
right, see you.
See you guys tomorrow at 6.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who joined in as well.
Thanks,
We really
everybody.
appreciate
Stay
it.
dry. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.